Spoilers ahead for Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Script Department. Today's a very exciting day. Caleb and I are here to launch a brand new show. This is Caleb's Baby, where we are looking at the best of horror, the best that horror can offer from all around, time. So that's really exciting. Before we get to it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts for all of our interesting conversations, be it horrifying or otherwise. Caleb, this is yours, man. So, Invasion of the
Yeah,
Body Snatchers, let's go.
yeah. Well, so first, I think uh, that I want people to see horror movies in a different light, and so I think that having these conversations with like the Thing that we did the first time,
Yeah,
the John Carpenter, the Thing, was a really good conversation, and I think that I just wanted to do some more. So
let's go.
I've wanted to see Body Snatchers '78. It's one of my blind spots, but I've always
Mhm.
heard and known that it's one that I'm gonna love.
Cool.
um, because of the cultural significance. And so I made this excuse for us to have a conversation about it and watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a horror newcomer, big time. I think if we during the conversation we had about the Thing, I made no. I've tried to educate myself a little bit. We spoke about Nope as well, and we've had a few conversations around some other horrors. But yeah, I'm very much a newcomer to the genre, and I'm loving my journey through it so far. It's really really interesting. This caught me totally unawares. This film, it is like it's thoroughly entertaining. My God, the like I just like and because I had no idea what to expect, I didn't know anything about this going in. This literally is a case of you text me and said, "Hey, do you want to do Body Snatchers?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right, why not?" And I so here we are. So I knew nothing. I knew nothing going into this. And yeah, wow, what an entertaining bit of cinema. Like the the opening sequence, right, grabbed me immediately because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is weird, isn't it? And then it begins to sort of, you know, it develops, and you kind of go, oh, and it lands in the rain and the goo and everything. It's so like visually startling, isn't it? Like,
Yeah. Well, like, and even as the credits are going, you have Leonard Nimoy's name pop up,
yeah,
and my
I was
my
like,
wife was watching it at the time, and it was like, wait, this feels really sci-fi. It
mm,
feels almost like borderline Star Trek, like
yeah,
with the time, the period, the effects, the music, all of that. Obviously, this is a much different movie,
different movie, yeah.
but like that was because it develops from that. But yeah, no, it's such a great intro. And yeah, no, I had seen The Invasion, which was 2007. Um, I caught it in theaters. It was
Okay.
the most recent remake of this.
Oh, I didn't know
Daniel
about that.
Craig and Naomi Watts.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is. So I don't want to speak poorly about it too hard, like too harsh,
Sure.
but I watched this movie and I'm like, how did you get to this remake in the 2000s whenever
Oh
you had
wow.
such good source material? Because this blew me away.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that opening sequence. Robert Duvall is in the background just for one shot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
What?
noticed that.
Did notice that, yeah. This
Yeah,
film is full of people
yeah,
that you kind of go, "Oh, okay. Hey, buddy, how's
yeah,
it
yeah,
going?" It's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's great. I especially I loved the some of the cinematography and everything in here as well is so cool. Like we're at screenwriting, but it's nice to talk about these things. Like the shot of those houses on the hill, so they're flat on the pavement, and the houses are all like this. And it's kind of that interesting like Dutch angle kind of vibe. But even though it's not, it's just it's kind of a weird twist on it. And I think the way this is shot and the tone of it, everything it's perfect for what it is, because you have all of these people wandering around, and they are on the outward human beings that you would recognize and everything like that, but of course they're not. And that is sort of what this film does from a cinematic point of view is it's what you expect, but it's not at the same time, and that all caught me in that one shot of that it's a Dutch angle, but it's not a Dutch angle because it's on a hill. I thought it was I thought it was really, really cool. That's my like little highbrow bit of cinema that I enjoyed there.
Yeah, no, like that's I think like what you highlighted there is what I really enjoyed about this movie. Like where it start you have the intro, but then it kind of once it comes down to earth, uh, you don't know uh, how much this movie's gonna spiral out of control and like really become a horror movie by the end of it.
Mm,
There's not a lot of violence. There's like it's not like super gruesome,
no.
but by the end of it, it's crazy, and given the time period. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I loved all of that. But I think that like you talking about that shot. So now the question is that I feel like from a screenwriting standpoint that we can talk about
Mhm.
is the using the setting and location of where the movie is set, using that in a screenwriting technique because I feel like this movie does it really well. So I don't know what
Absolutely.
your thoughts are there.
Yeah, it is it's so perfect, you know, the way that the because it's LA, right? That's where this is. Like it's all going on in kind of greater
I
Los
believe it's
Angeles
San
area.
Francisco.
It was San Francisco. I thought they said it was
I think so.
okay, that explains my slight confusion then in that case. Because there's a bit there where they say, because the hills, yeah, I'm with you. My American geography is not that fantastic, so you'll have
You're
to forgive me that.
yeah, you're
I
good.
You may tell by the accent I'm not native. But the
Wait a second.
whoa, hold on there. The no the no I think from a using location in screenwriting is such an important thing to do. You know, why is somewhere set something? You know, all of these questions you have to be able to answer as a screenwriter as to why you're doing it. You can't just arbitrarily put something somewhere. You know, if it's in a if you're putting something in a quaint little English village, why is it in the quaint little English village? If it is if it's in San Francisco, why is it in San Francisco? And I think that's it feels as though it feels very correct, it feels very right, and it feels as though the city it does kind of form that as a character in its own right. Would you agree? Is that kind of the
What I really noticed whenever there's this the sequence where they're running from the alien, like it's like kind of the first big sequence where
mm,
oh the aliens have taken over
yeah,
and like the ratio is shifting and we're feeling that in the movie and they're in a house and they're getting cornered and so like they I think this is past the midpoint but they escape through the backyard they're
yes,
running um and there's this sequence of just running downstairs and turning corners and it's all like it's I think most of it visually is done just by cutting so you're getting this maze like effect which but I think that that all for me goes back to the location and where it's where the screenwriter set it because you're fully utilizing the location to the cinematic ability of what story you're telling and like so that using that to elevate things is what I really noticed in this and really enjoyed because there are a lot of movies where it's like okay where is this set like and it doesn't matter um
and that can be a good
and
choice
that's
sometimes. You
where
know,
not
that can be
exactly
a
yeah
you know that can be a choice of like this could be anywhere, and that's why it's scary. You know, because it could be your city, it could be round the corner from you, but this is not. You're quite right. You know, this is not one of those occasions. Like it is. It's and she even says at one point, the city's changing. You know, these are people who are like who understand their city, who know their city, and they feel the lifeblood of their city. And she notices that you know the atmosphere changes. So that's a really nice point. That the fact that because you know it's reflected in the dialogue too. It's good.
yeah what were your thoughts on because like that leads to me to whenever I was viewing like the first act what were your thoughts on how they start to develop that idea of the city is changing because they don't really show it they just
No.
tell you and then they start to show it they start to peel back like oh yeah it is changing
This is one of those occasions. Normally, as screenwriters, we would always yell at the idea of show don't tell. But this is one of those occasions where actually telling us rather than showing us is more intriguing, because you find yourself watching people in the background, and you are and these creatures are so well hidden that you can't tell as the audience, and you're going, well, hang on, that guy looks a bit stiff over there. Is he one of them? Is he going to get them? Oh no, no, he smiled, he can't be one of them. But the guy next to him, maybe. And you're looking at these individuals and you're trying to work it out, and that's all because they've told you something's going on. It's almost Hitchcockian in that way. That idea, the bomb under the table. You tell the audience there's a bomb under the table. It's more interesting. You tell everybody that these people are changing. Whoa, okay, like we're gonna look around, and it's it's amazing, especially when we then start seeing the kind of fetus form of these plant creatures kind of growing, and
Man, those are disturbing.
can you imagine? Can you imagine like waking up after your really pleasant nap in your deck chair in your garden, and there's like you there, and there's like your girlfriend over there, and they're all like half formed. Oh my god!
Yeah, yeah.
Like
And like that that beat like is really sold and highlighted to the viewer whenever he goes to like it's kind of the viewer yelling at the screen, I think, of like, what, like, don't leave, go back and kill them. And he goes back, and so like that the writer like knew, like, or felt that out, like this is going to be that moment of that. And like he goes back to kill the I don't remember her name, but
neither
he
can I, to be honest.
to his love interest
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah,
um and so he goes back and can't do it because it's like it looks exactly like her.
yeah,
And but he can kill himself
yeah.
because that's like the scary, he knows like that's not me.
It's a really interesting character beat, because he's able to dispatch himself, but he's not able to dispatch her, and I think that's it says so much about his character, and the kind of the the selflessness of that character, and the fact that he is actually, I would argue there's a few elements here where I don't know that he's the most kind of fascinating protagonist. He's quite sort of he's a he's a good guy, and that's pretty much it. Like he's a thoroughly decent bloke, and that's pretty much all there is there. It doesn't matter though, because actually it's about the whole package, and he actually, if he was much more, if he was anything else, it may not kind of function in the same
Complex.
way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
about that. It's not what this is.
yeah.
And so I love that.
His most interesting quality is his job, and like that really weighs into, like the beginning is showing who his character is through his job, and then in a way drawing a parallel to like what we know is coming, of like he's this health inspector. Obviously he's going to have to deal with this, like, in a way, public health crisis
Yeah,
of
absolutely. Yeah,
people being turned into aliens. And so like so I mean those are two major
yeah,
it's a public health crisis.
yeah,
But those are two, if you look at like ticking all the boxes as you write, um those are two of the major like questions that you approach a script to, I think, where, what's my location, what's my setting, and how does it weigh into the story,
mm,
and then who's my protagonist.
yeah,
And like one of the major questions on that is like, what does he do for a living, and like, is that important to inform his character, or is it not? And yeah, so I think that for me, that's just why I just was like kind of blown away by this movie. And I think it's jumped up, not to spoil, but I think
oh,
it's jumped up into some of my top favorite movies.
no way, that's
It'll
very
probably
cool.
be one that, yeah, or sorry, horror movies. But there's this idea in horror that, um, a lot of horror movies approach sci-fi horror, even just sci-fi. Twilight Zone has done it.
Mm,
There's all of this genre has approached, um, filmmaking and storytelling from a lens of societal issues or sociological issues, um, and like telling an allegorical story. So how do you think that this one approaches that, and even to the point of, like, through the modern day lens? Because I think we have to address it with we're watching it from our time.
From now, from this point of view, we've just lived through a global pandemic, and you have here an allegory including public health concerns and people denying the fact that it's going on, and people very high positions of power denying that things are happening, people not listening to experts. There are big things, there are massive allegories there. For obviously it wasn't intended that way, but I think you can read it as a as that entirely from in this day and age. It's a it's kind of an eternal problem though, isn't it? It was the case in the 70s and in the 80s. I think that this is
In the 50s, whenever the first movie came out.
yeah, absolutely. I guess this is one of those reasons though why it's been adapted. That we've got three versions of it now, you say, is that right? So that it's
I
because it
believe there's total, yeah.
yeah, so it comes to me. I mean, we'll probably get a new one fairly soon because it seems to be, it's that sort of thing taking over. It's a very universal idea. We're gonna put our meaning behind this extraterrestrial threat that will take over something that we need. There are, looking at the time period, you could also compare this to slightly less altruistic things, perhaps immigration, for example, people coming and taking over from other people's jobs and other people's culture and things like that. The aliens, literally the aliens. You look at McCarthyism and things like that. That's there. They kind of the red.
Yeah, no, I think that that is what, like, if you look at the 50s one,
Yeah.
and what
Oh,
it
it
like,
must be.
I don't
Yeah.
remember. I think this is I believe it's based off of a story, like a short story or something written. Um, but yeah, like I think that that's like the initial idea is what I really feel like that comes in from the historical point of view. But I yeah, like I think what I was kind of bringing is like there's this, of course, the pandemic is like you can't not think about that watching this movie.
Yeah.
Um, but even this idea of like they're turning, so the quote unquote they're turning us into whatever they want us to be, almost this idea of conformity. And I think that it's down what works so well about, and I'm about to go on a preaching of the horror good news.
I'm into it. Do
Um,
it.
but what works so well about horror is that um, the scary thing. If you come up with a good scary idea, the scary thing is not the monster. It's the Jaws effect of, we've only seen the shark. It's our imagination that brings
Yeah.
the real horror. And so I think it's more about, in terms of writing, it's about bringing out this idea of what scares us as humans and what does the viewer bring that's going to scare them. And so if it's just in that right amount of revealing the monster, but then letting the other half be filled in by the viewer,
Hmm.
that's where it really gets scary.
Yeah.
And so that's what this does so well. And so I think that like politically, whoever you're politically leaning, which way you watch this movie, and you see it through that lens, because I think you're not, we're not gonna not see through whatever lens that we think through.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's this idea of like they want to turn us into them. Um, and so like that's what's perfect about, I think, why this movie holds up, because no matter like what lens you see that through, it works,
Yeah.
it's not
Oh, yeah.
specific. So
Absolutely. There will
yeah.
always be an us and a them in whatever kind of world you're in,
Hmm.
and it's a sad truth, but I think there is some truth in that, and this film exploits that, and I think it's a to kind of pick up your point there. Um, it's what science fiction does so well as well. This is horror science fiction. This is that wonderful thing. One of the reasons we tell stories is to explore ideas about ourselves and to explore, and test out, what would you do in this situation? What would you do if something, if this perfectly ordinary person, your neighbor, your wife, your husband, your brother, whatever it is, this person who you know very well, what happens one day if they change? And how do you explain that? How do you rationalize that? from just a very kind of plot based point of view, rehearsing that in these films is one of the reasons why we tell stories. And looking at that through the lens of science fiction is such a great way of doing it, and horror does that so well. It's that brilliant thing, and I could not agree with you more. It's what I'm beginning to understand through my exploration of horror. So I thank you for taking me on this journey.
Welcome, brother. Welcome.
I
Come
love
in.
it. I'm bathed in the blood of the lamb. I love it.
I think the thing for me um, that I wanted to add, like, get your thoughts on, was the quality. So this is a direction thing, not a screenwriting thing, but
All
how,
relevant.
like, we can talk about how it comes back to yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Perfect. But so, like, that you watch this movie and the direction in it is so refreshing, and I'm
Yeah,
like, the reason I it really like clicked with me is like there's just editing techniques, there's pacing techniques that are employed that like just really like got me like excited. It was really refreshing. And then I'm like, this is 78, like,
yeah,
and this is a movie we haven't seen, and it's just a breath of fresh air of
yeah.
like, this is so creative, and they were doing it all the way back then.
Sure.
And so that really excites me. But so I wanted your thoughts there on the filmmaking that's going on, and how the screenwriting is influencing that, I guess.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact that it's incredibly stylized, and I think that you can get that in the way the dialogue is written. This is that, and I can't. This is one day I'm going to do a PhD studying dialogue because I could research the hell out of this area because it fascinates me. Like the dialogue in this film is at one time completely stylized. Jeff Goldblum is just a stylized man in general, but he is standing
Oh
there
man.
like he's just he's great in this as well. Like, but he's standing there and he's just talking over the top of his buddy, talking over the top of Matthews on the phone, and he's just talking, and he's doing that, and you completely buy it. You completely believe those two. Though their interactions between those two are just brilliant. They're so wonderful, so nuanced, so subtle, so everything like that. But at the same time, totally over the top. And I think that that's what this script is. This script is nuanced, it's subtle, but it's also over the top because it is a film about like body snatchers from space. You can't have a subtle film about body snatchers from space, and yet here it is. Like
No.
it's that really interesting thing you do. So I think it absolutely the style of this 100% comes from the script because it's given to the director on a plate in the way this dialogue is written, in the way it's and the actors inform that as well. And you get those wonderful, we talked about the kind of the interesting Dutch angle thing earlier on, but also there's that final shot of Matthew when you are following him around and you're not sure if he's turned or not and what it is, and
Brilliant.
then the kind of the shock zoom and he's like ah, doing his scream, doing
Yeah.
the scream they all do, and they just go for it. They like zoom right in on him, and they get that trolley and they go right into his face, and it's great. It's trolley. It's not a trolley. You know what I'm talking about. The put it
Dolly.
on a track.
Yeah,
You
you're
know what
good.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
They go
Yeah.
right up there. They don't. The director doesn't hold back. This would have been, and I think that's the thing is that the script is so well written, the dialogue works so well, the kind of the structure of this is so well written and confidently written that you can play as a director. You don't need to worry about the story because the story's already taken care of. You can play and you can tell the story in an interesting way. A lesser script requires a heavier hand by the director. And I think that that's where this really works, and what makes this sing is the fact that it's so playfully done. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and yet finds a way of like scaring the bejesus out of you. I'm very into this film, Caleb. I really enjoyed it.
Right. Yeah. Well, like, and there's the way that it ramps up, and the direction, which obviously, again, you have the direction and then you have the editing, but it all goes back to the screenwriting. But like the beats that they choose to hit of where to ramp things up. Like, you have the first one in my mind that I can think of is whenever they're in the public the Department of Health office, and he's there like he's still not doesn't know that like everything's changing. They pass like some random person, and you're seeing, like you were talking about, people in the background acting kind of weird, just standing there. But he passes someone, and that it lingers on a shot and does a couple different cuts,
Yeah.
where it shows this guy and his reaction to, I believe it's Donald Sutherland at the time. And so like, so even just like that, and then into him on the phone in the phone booth, and then like the people like kind of freaking out there. You have the people in the car, or the guy in the that gets hit by the car later on, I'm assuming, who rams into, or like jumps on their car, and screams. Like, so yeah, so just those moments are they're I think what it does is, if you choose those and you place them in the right area and you emphasize them, then it heightens everything else around it. And for me, that part was that really, I think, where we can go into the horror discussion of this movie and not just the sci-fi, is so that, horror is, there's not a lot of violence in this movie, but what were your thoughts whenever you finally see what happens to the bodies?
It's oh man, I mean, it's we are, but it's one of these things. I think you can't help but, because it's so visceral, you can't help but kind of put yourself in this situation. We are both married with wives, and I cannot help but think how awful that would be, and how appalling that experience would be. You'd never be the same again. And then watching her pop up, um, you know, immediately afterwards, and because I was wondering throughout this whole film, I was wondering, oh, what happens to the bodies then? That's so weird. And then
Yeah,
and you're watching
yeah,
the bins and the dust and things like that, and you're just like, what's going on? Oh God, oh no. And it's so visceral. And I think the fact that I don't know, you can say they held back, because there are some gruesome parts of this, but I think to a certain extent, they held back on the gruesomeness, they held back on the gore. And I think that the fact they did that, and then this happens, I like recoiled from the screen, and like, like, ugh, when that happened. And I think it's the juxtaposition of the tenderness of that moment, that beautiful scene that they have when they, and the hope, and I'm there, and you're looking at him, you go, Matthew, what are you doing, man? Don't leave her there. She's gonna fall asleep. She's gonna fall asleep.
right.
And
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 bagpipes are playing,
yeah,
the what's that song? I'm blanking
Amazing
on it,
Grace.
but
Yeah,
they're playing that Amazing Grace. Yeah,
yeah,
they're
yeah,
playing that song. Yeah,
yeah. You know what really made me laugh as well, just from a total. I'm just gonna hijack this conversation as a Star Trek nerd right now. Is that that song, Amazing Grace, on the bagpipes, right? Is the song that's
yep,
played in Wrath
Leonard
of
Nimoy.
Khan when Spock is being flung off to the Genesis planet. And I'm sad that, and you know what, the way it heightens and everything, it's almost the same arrangement. And I'm sat there kind of going, I wonder if you knew. I wonder if you did this on purpose, like one way or the other. Like, Leonard Nimoy's in this movie. Maybe it's the same
I
thing.
hope so. I hope so. It is a ve- it's a very strange choice, and I still
It
don't
is.
know if I know why they chose to do that. I mean, it does. It's effective.
Yeah, it is. I think it's because it's a religious song, and there's a boat involved, and it's salvation. By the grace of God, we may survive. I suspect that's what it is. Bagpipes are, this sort of very primal instrument. They come from a earlier time. The idea of bagpipes calling you home and things like that. That would be my theory on it. Is
Yeah,
that's
that's
why
great.
they probably did it. But it is incredibly effective as well. That kind of guttural sound of bagpipes, and then the moment where it just turns into what, like a shipping forecast, and it's like, oh no, and then the stuff's going on to the boat.
In the way that it's like, it's that false sense of comfort, that it's like, oh, he's seeing salvation, going to it, leaving his love interest. I gotta figure out her name. Leaving her behind. but yeah, like, and then to immediately strip that away, like, is just,
Brutal.
it's an awareness um of knowing how to play the audience. All like direction is manipulation, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's some straight up manipulation right there.
Oh goddamn, is
Um,
it just? Yeah,
that
it's
might might piss some people off. Like, I mean, that is a lot of the horror genre, is like the killer always comes back at the end, which is
yeah,
kind of the trope that I don't. I think it needs to be earned.
sure.
It ruins a lot of horror movies for me whenever they do that. But this one really earns its ending for me, in the way that, like, you were talking about, how it the shots that it lingers on, and like how it plays with our emotion of, oh, he's still good, like he's hiding, and then just that like split reversal, just like, and then to cut to black and be like, there you go.
It's so brutal because it is that it's that thing of again I can't remember her name. This is terrible, isn't it? But like I don't think they are loudly said, those names, to be fair, during this film, because I normally write them down when they
I'm on
happen
my
in my.
laptop, or else I would.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally. I can't. It would ruin everything. But the I think that the fact that some time must have passed, right? And quite a long amount of time must have passed when for him to be there and things like that. And then so it's the realization that she hasn't been to sleep this whole time. She has been
Yeah.
awake
Yeah.
and dealing with this situation, and she finally is seeing somebody that she's seeing Matthew. She's like, Matthew, oh wow. And then that
Thank
horrible,
God.
that sound that he makes, and that, and the eyes and everything, it's absolutely terrifying. Like, whoo, it's
Yeah.
great.
Have you seen The World's End?
I have
The
seen
Edgar
World.
Wright movie, The World's End.
Yes, I have.
This is a straight rip off. The perfect double feature. You have to watch it after this. Like,
Wow.
I was watching this movie and my mind was blown, because I love Edgar Wright, one of my favorite filmmakers, and I was like, he just straight up ripped this movie and
Did
made it into a complete reversal of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the '78, obviously.
sure, sure.
So
Wow. Oh my
yeah, yeah,
god.
yeah,
I didn't even think of
yeah.
that. I didn't notice that. That's mad. Yeah.
So, so this only works if you've seen The World's End and Invasion. But I was watching the scene of them walking, and like in Invasion, uh, where it's focusing on the feet and then it's cutting back and forth, and it's just literally feet walking. That is, like, Edgar Wright straight up stole that with the walking in The World's End, and like put a comedic twist on it. I don't know. I just love it. I think that this is a great double bill that should be watched back to back every time.
I totally agree.
Because
That's amazing.
um,
I might go watch that in a minute.
well, and even,
That's so fun.
yes. So anyone who hasn't seen that, go watch it, and hopefully it is the perfect antithesis of the ideas that Invasion is getting at, and the human condition of like
Yeah.
the theme that it's
Oh
dealing
no.
with. It's
This
so
is
much fun.
blowing
So
my mind, Caleb. Oh my god. This is brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah. You're so right.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, all that to wrap it up. But what were your final thoughts on it,
My
now
final
knowing
thoughts
that?
on. Yeah, yeah, I mean, it certainly improved the world's end for me somewhat, but but it's this film is endlessly creative, highly stylized, has a lot of really interesting things to say. I think some of them we've touched on. You could talk about this. You could settle down in an armchair of the pub and talk about this film for an evening, and you wouldn't run out of things to say. It is such a and maybe we will, Caleb. Maybe we will one day, and that would be a beautiful way to spend an
Hopefully,
evening. Hopefully, but no, it's a
have one for
it's
me.
I will. I will. It's no. It's a brilliant movie. The pacing is so interesting. It just is so frantic when you start getting into that. Kind of half that midpoint, and it's just unrelenting. And this poor guy is just having stuff thrown at him left, right, and center, and you feel for him. And I think it just it feels chaotic in a really controlled way, and I think that it has to be the highest compliment you can give a director. is for something to feel chaotic in a controlled way. So yeah, it was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for introducing me.
Yeah, no, I'm again happy that I had an excuse. Just like we did with The Thing, it was
Yeah,
another excuse to watch a great movie.
yeah,
And for the record, Elizabeth is her name,
of course it is.
the character
Thank
that we
you,
couldn't remember.
thank you for that.
So yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, look, Caleb, thank you for educating me here. Thank you for educating me on the thing. If you guys are interested in continuing to listen to Caleb educate me and others at the script department on the delights of the horror genre, then please do stick around. This is going to be a new series of yours, Caleb, that is going to be popping up
yep.
every now and again. We're going to be looking at horror. So thank you for that. And yeah, I think that's that. So unless you have any final thoughts, then thanks very much, guys, and
I
we'll
kind of
see
want to
you
just like
again. We can.